Have you ever watched someone you loved, someone you shared a bed with, a life with, quietly walk into a storm they never explained, disappear, leaving behind everything they owned, and your name on all of it? That's exactly what happened to me. One morning, my husband casually handed me a thick folder of documents across the kitchen table. He was calm. Too calm, he said. "I've been doing some restructuring. Just sign these to make it official. It's just paperwork. For tax purposes." At the time, we'd been married 7 years. I had no reason not to trust him. He'd always handled our finances. He was an accountant by profession, and he was meticulous to a fault. I skimmed the papers and signed them, distracted by a call from my sister about her upcoming baby shower. I didn't realize I had just become the legal owner of not just the house we lived in, but 15 other properties, commercial offices, duplexes, farmland, a lakeside vacation home I had only seen once, and even a storage facility on the outskirts of town I didn't know because he didn't tell me. 3 days later, he vanished. No fight, no warning, no accident. Just ... Gone. His phone was off. His bank accounts were drained, but not in a suspicious way, more like someone carefully preparing to start a new life. I remember calling every hospital, every police department, even our mutual friends. Nothing. Everyone was confused. Some thought it was a joke. Others thought maybe I knew more than I was saying. But I didn't. I was just as shocked as anyone. For the first week, I couldn't sleep. I'd walk around the house at night looking for clues or receipts, passwords, any sign he'd left a trail. All I found were blank walls and the echo of a man who once kissed my forehead every morning before leaving for work. It felt like a death, but worse. There was no body, no closure. Just silence. The police weren't much help either. Adults go missing all the time, they said. Unless there's foul play or signs of danger, we can't treat it as a crime. I felt like I was going insane, but then the letters started arriving. Deeds, contracts, ownership, verifications. Property, taxes, all addressed to me. That's when I realized Di was now legally in charge of everything he had owned. Every last brick, every contract, every lease. And all of it was now my responsibility. At first I thought maybe he did it to hide assets. Maybe he was on the run, trying to keep things in my name to protect them. But the more I looked, the clearer it became. He wasn't hiding from the law. He was escaping his life. He'd planned it meticulously. And he left everything to me, not by mistake, but by design. I was stunned. There was no note, no explanation. But there was precision. The property portfolio alone was worth over $8.6 million. The mortgages were paid off. The businesses were operational. I didn't even know he owned 3 rental complexes in the city. I sat there, alone, with every document spread across our dining table like a giant puzzle. And I had to make a decision. Do I chase ghosts and try to find him? Or do I step into this unexpected power and collect what was now legally mine? I chose the latter, not out of greed, but out of survival. So I started collecting. I called every lawyer I could find. I verified each deed. I restructured the leases. I visited every property in person, often pretending to be just the manager, so tenants wouldn't ask questions. I fired crooked contractors, replaced property managers who didn't even know who I was, and took over meetings that had always been handled by him. I was terrified, but I was also evolving. I went from a woman who had never signed a real estate contract on her own to running a multi-million-dollar portfolio in less than 6 months. But that wasn't the shocking part. The shocking part was what I began to uncover along the way. You see, when someone disappears and leaves you everything, the real question isn't why they left, it's what they were escaping from. And as I looked deeper into the properties, I started finding clues. One office complex was being investigated for embezzlement. A tenant in the lakeside property had recently been arrested for fraud. A shell company tied to one warehouse was laundering money for someone, maybe him, maybe not. And then I found the offshore accounts. My name was tied to one of them. Not directly, but through a proxy company he'd opened under my maiden name. That's when panic set in again. Was I now unknowingly part of something criminal? He set me up to take the fall for whatever mess he created. I hired a forensic accountant. I brought in a private investigator. And what we found chilled me to the bone. My husband, Jacob, had slowly been removing himself from every liability he owned. He'd shut down companies right before tax season. He'd sold off risky investments and turned them into cash. But instead of fleeing with it, he moved the clean assets, properties, and money under my name, keeping the risky ones quietly dissolved. According to the investigator, it looked less like a setup and more like protection. He'd been in trouble with someone, maybe a client, maybe someone bigger. But rather than leave me in danger, he removed himself from the equation and left me the good half of his world. And then he vanished, not to punish me, but to keep me clear of whatever was closing in. As that truth sunk in, I felt a strange mixture of grief and empowerment. I had been abandoned, yes, but also entrusted. And now, every day, I collect rent, equity, respect. I went from being the wife of a successful man to the woman who owns the empire he left behind. And in time, I stopped looking for him. If he ever comes back, I'll have questions. But I'm no longer a woman waiting by the phone. I'm a CEO, a landlord, a mystery to those who once pitied me. Every time I walk into a bank, they address me as the owner. Every time I sign a contract, I sign in my own right. I collected everything he left behind. And then I built even more. My portfolio has grown. I've reinvested the income. I've donated to causes I care about. And I've started mentoring other women who found themselves unexpectedly in power. Because while the beginning of this story was written by him, the rest is all mine. So now I'll leave you with this question. If someone disappeared and left you everything they owned, no explanations, number apologies, would you chase after them for closure, or step forward and claim the life they handed you?